Ladies and gentlemen, he has arrived. You spent years trying to find him, but you never realized he was already here.
He has no idea what he's about to inherit.
The chairman slammed both hands onto the polished oak table so hard that crystal water glasses rattled. "Lock every exit," he shouted. "If Ethan Vale walks out of this room before signing these papers, the Ashbourne Dominion is finished." 27 directors turned toward the doorway at once, but the man they were searching for wasn't wearing a designer suit or a gold watch. He stood in dusty work boots, a faded work jacket streaked with limestone dust, and calloused hands that looked more suited to rebuilding abandoned cathedrals than controlling one of the largest private fortunes on Earth. A silver-haired woman stepped in front of him before security could move. "Touch him," she warned, "and every one of you will regret it before sunrise." The room fell silent. None of the directors noticed the small leather folder Ethan carried under his arm. They were too busy staring at the man they dismissed as an imposter. They had no idea that inside that folder was a single document capable of destroying careers, exposing betrayals, and revealing why one billionaire had spent 39 years pretending his only talent was repairing forgotten buildings. The answer had begun 6 days earlier. If stories about hidden fortunes and impossible choices keep you guessing until the very end, make sure you're subscribed now, because this one only gets more unbelievable from here. 6 days earlier, Ethan balanced on a narrow stone ledge nearly 80 feet above the ground, carefully replacing a weathered gargoyle that had survived wars, storms, and generations of neglect. Every movement had to be perfect. One mistake could send centuries of craftsmanship crashing into the square below. His apprentice looked up nervously. "You're taking too long." Ethan smiled without looking down. "Stone remembers impatience," he replied. "That's why old buildings outlive proud men." The apprentice laughed, even though he didn't understand what Ethan meant. By midday, the gargoyle was secure, stronger than it had been in decades. An elderly woman from the nearby village approached with a small basket. "I can't pay what your work is worth," she said quietly, "but I baked these this morning." Inside were still warm pastries. Ethan accepted them with genuine gratitude. "They're worth more than money." She blinked back tears. "Nobody fixes things anymore," she whispered. "Everyone just replaces them." He simply nodded. "I've always believed some things deserve another chance." His phone vibrated. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. Instead, he answered. "This is Ethan." The voice on the other end spoke with remarkable calm. "Mr. Vale, this is Margaret Ellison." He frowned. "I don't think we've met." "No." A pause. "But your father instructed me to call the moment this day arrived." Ethan's grip tightened. "My father died when I was a boy." Another silence. "No," the woman answered. "Richard Ashbourne died 3 hours ago." The world seemed to stop. Even the wind felt quieter. Ethan stared across the rooftops. "I think you've called the wrong person. I never make that mistake. My surname isn't Ashbourne. It was changed when you were 4. His heartbeat quickened. "My mother never told me any of this. She promised your father she wouldn't." He climbed down without another word. His apprentice hurried over. "Everything all right?" Ethan looked strangely distant. "I don't know." By evening he arrived outside a sprawling estate hidden behind ancient iron gates taller than most houses. Black vehicles stretched along the private road. Helicopters circled overhead. News crews waited beyond the perimeter. People wearing tailored suits walked past him without a second glance. One man carrying expensive luggage almost knocked him over. "Watch where you're standing," the stranger snapped. Ethan apologized automatically. The man shook his head. "They'll let anyone in nowadays." Margaret Ellison appeared before Ethan could respond. She looked to be in her 70s, dressed simply despite the wealth surrounding her. Without hesitation, she extended both hands. "Welcome home." He stared at her. "I've never been here." "You were born here." She led him through towering halls lined with portraits stretching back centuries. Every painting seemed to carry the same piercing eyes. Margaret stopped beneath the largest portrait. A distinguished man stood beside massive wind turbines overlooking a coastline. Richard Ashbourne. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. Ethan took a slow breath. That's your father. He never came for me. Margaret's expression softened. He wanted to every single day. Then why didn't he? Because he believed giving you an ordinary life was the only way to protect you. She handed Ethan an old envelope sealed with dark blue wax. The answers are inside. His fingers hovered over the seal. What if I don't want them? You already do. He broke it open. Inside was a handwritten letter. Only a few lines appeared on the first page. If you are reading this, I have already lost my final battle with time. Ethan swallowed. Before anyone tells you who I was, remember who you became without me. His hands trembled. Margaret waited silently. The next paragraph changed everything. Never apologize for rebuilding broken things. It was the one quality none of the billionaires around me ever understood. Ethan stopped reading. His eyes filled with emotion he hadn't expected. He knew what I did. Margaret smiled sadly. He knew every school you restored. Every bridge. Every chapel. Every family you quietly helped. You've been watching me? No. She looked toward the portrait. He was. Ethan's chest tightened. He never even called. He wanted to hundreds of times. Then why didn't he? Because there were people waiting for him to make that mistake. She led him into a private study unlike anything he'd ever seen. Maps covered the walls. Company reports. Shipping routes. Energy grids. Photographs. One entire wall displayed images of Ethan taken over 20 years. Working. Laughing. Teaching apprentices. Helping strangers after floods. None of the photographs appeared intrusive. Most looked as though they had been taken from a respectful distance. He watched my whole life. Margaret nodded. He wanted to know whether you would become a man worthy of choosing, not merely inheriting. Ethan noticed another photograph. His wife, Olivia. She was leaving an elegant restaurant. Across from her sat a sharply dressed man Ethan had never seen before. His smile seemed rehearsed. His watch alone probably cost more than Ethan's truck. Who is that? Margaret's face changed instantly. That? She reached for the photograph. Is Damien Mercer. Should I know him? You will. She hesitated. Unfortunately, far sooner than either of us wanted. At that exact moment, a young assistant burst into the study, pale with panic. Mrs. Ellison. She turned immediately. What happened? The board has called an emergency meeting. So, they've just received signatures authorizing the sale of the Helios Energy Division. Margaret frowned. Impossible. The chairman says Richard approved it before he died. Margaret's eyes hardened. He absolutely did not. The assistant struggled to breathe. There's something else. What? The documents list Damien Mercer as the buyer. She looked directly at Ethan. And someone has already told the board that Richard's son died years ago. The room went completely silent. Ethan stared at the document on the table. His name wasn't there. Not the name he had lived with. Not the identity he had built. Someone had erased him before he even stepped into the room. Margaret slowly took the papers from the assistant's hands and scanned every page. Her expression changed from concern to disbelief. They moved faster than expected. Ethan looked at her. Who is Damien Mercer? Margaret placed the documents down carefully. Someone who spent years pretending to be your father's closest ally. And now? Now he believes your father is dead, and the only person standing between him and a fortune larger than some countries' economies is a man nobody knows exists. Ethan looked back at the photograph of Damien sitting across from Olivia. His wife. The woman who had spent 6 years beside him. The woman who knew every scar, every struggle, every dream. But apparently not every secret. His phone suddenly vibrated. Olivia. For a moment, he didn't answer. Margaret noticed. You should. Ethan looked at the screen. Should I? Before today, she knew one version of you. Now you need to find out what version of you she chooses. He answered. Hello. There was silence. Then Olivia's voice. Ethan? Yes. Where are you? He looked around the billionaire estate he had never known belonged to his family. I'm somewhere I should have been told about a long time ago. Another silence. Longer this time. What does that mean? Ethan closed his eyes. Who is Damian Mercer? The silence that followed was louder than any confession. Ethan. Olivia. I can explain. Those 4 words hurt more than anger. Because explanations only came after something was already broken. When did you meet him? I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't ask that. She breathed heavily. I met him through friends. When? 3 months ago. Ethan looked at Margaret. She already knew. And what did he tell you? Nothing. Then Olivia whispered. He told me you were hiding something. Ethan felt his stomach tighten. He was right. A pause. You're not denying it? No. Then tell me the truth. For years Ethan had wanted to tell her. But every time he tried, he remembered his father's warning. Not everyone who loves you will love the truth about you. I am Richard Ashbourne's son. Olivia laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it sounded impossible. Don't do this. I'm not joking. Ethan, please. My real name is Ethan Ashbourne. The silence became unbearable. Then she said something he never expected. How much? He frowned. What? How much money? The question hit harder than he expected. I don't know. How can you not know? Because I never cared. Olivia's voice became softer. That is easy to say when you've never had to worry. Ethan looked away. I thought you knew me. I thought I did too. The call ended. No goodbye. No apology. Just silence. For the first time in 6 years, Ethan realized he wasn't afraid of losing wealth he had never used. He was afraid of losing the person who knew the poorest version of him. And maybe that person never existed. The next morning, Ethan entered the Ashbourne Dominion headquarters for the first time. The building was impossible to ignore. Glass walls. Private elevators. Hundreds of employees. People who had spent their entire careers working under the shadow of Richard Ashbourne. But when Ethan walked inside, whispers followed him. That's him. He doesn't look like a billionaire. Maybe he's not. A security officer stopped him. Identification. Ethan reached for his wallet. Margaret stepped forward. That won't be necessary. The officer looked confused. Ma'am? His access level is higher than yours. The officer immediately stepped aside. Ethan noticed something. Nobody looked scared of him. They looked uncertain. That mattered. Because power wasn't just about people obeying you. It was about whether they believed you deserved it. Inside the executive floor, Damian Mercer waited. He stood near the window overlooking the city. Perfect suit. Perfect smile. Perfect confidence. Ethan. The way he said his name felt rehearsed. Congratulations. Ethan didn't shake his hand. On what? Damian smiled. Surviving long enough to discover who you are. Margaret stepped forward. You forged transfer documents. Damian laughed quietly. Careful. Why? Because accusations are dangerous when you can't prove them. Ethan watched him carefully. This man wasn't nervous. That bothered him. You expected me. Damian turned. I expected someone. A pause. I didn't expect you. Why? Because Richard spent 30 years preparing an heir. Damian looked Ethan up and down. And he chose a man who repairs broken windows and old buildings? The room went silent. Ethan remained calm. Those buildings were still standing when your companies failed. Damian's smile disappeared for half a second. Only half. But Ethan noticed. I understand why Richard liked you. Damian walked closer. You're idealistic. Is that a problem? In business. Damian leaned forward. Yes. He lowered his voice. People like you think doing the right thing is enough. Ethan looked directly at him. And people like you think winning is enough. Damian smiled. History only remembers winners. Then he placed a tablet on the desk. A news article was already open. The headline was brutal. Unknown man claims Ashbourne fortune after decades of silence. Below it were comments. Thousands. Calling Ethan a fraud. A scammer. A nobody trying to steal a dead man's empire. Ethan scrolled. Then he saw the photograph. The one spreading everywhere. It showed him being escorted away from the Ashbourne estate. Except that wasn't what happened. The image had been altered. His face was real. The situation wasn't. They made it look like I was removed. Margaret nodded. Exactly. Damien calmly picked up his jacket. The world doesn't care about truth. He moved toward the door. It cares about what it sees first. Before leaving, he turned. Oh, and Ethan? What? Your wife has been receiving copies of those documents for weeks. Ethan froze. Damien walked away. The room felt smaller. Margaret watched Ethan carefully. Don't believe everything he says. Ethan stared at the door. But you believe some of it. She didn't answer. And that was the answer. That night, Ethan returned to the house he shared with Olivia. But something felt different before he even opened the door. The lights were on. A suitcase sat near the entrance. His heart sank. Olivia? She stepped out from the hallway. Her eyes were red. Ethan. He looked at the suitcase. Are you leaving? She swallowed. I don't know. Then why pack? She looked away. Because I don't know who I've been married to. The words hurt. But before Ethan could respond, her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Her face changed. Ethan noticed. Who is it? She didn't answer. The phone kept ringing. Finally, Ethan saw the name. Damien Mercer. And then came the message beneath it. 3 words. It's time. Ethan looked at Olivia. She looked terrified. Not guilty. Terrified. And that was when Ethan realized something much worse than betrayal had happened. Olivia wasn't just involved. She was trapped. But before he could ask why, every television in the house turned on at once. A breaking news alert appeared. The anchor looked serious. Tonight, new evidence has emerged suggesting Richard Ashbourne's alleged son may not be the rightful heir. Ethan stared at the screen. Then the next image appeared. A birth certificate. With his name. And a large red stamp across it. Invalid. Margaret's voice came through the phone. Ethan. What? You need to leave immediately. Why? Her answer was quiet. Because if that document becomes official before midnight. A pause. You won't just lose the company. Ethan looked at the television. You'll lose your identity. Ethan stared at the television screen as the red stamp remained frozen across his supposed birth certificate. Invalid. 1 word. A word that could erase an entire life. His entire existence. Olivia stood across from him, unable to speak. The woman who had shared his apartment, his struggles, his quiet victories, now looked at him like she was seeing a stranger. Ethan, she whispered. He didn't move. Did you know about this? Her eyes filled with tears. No. The answer came quickly. Too quickly. Ethan noticed. Then tell me what you do know. She looked down. I know Damien has been planning something for months. His chest tightened. How much did you help him? I don't know. Ethan. No. His voice remained calm, but the pain behind it was obvious. I need the truth. Olivia wiped her face. He approached me because he knew I was unhappy. Ethan looked away. Unhappy with me? She didn't answer. That hurt more than words. He told me you were wasting your life. Ethan laughed quietly. Not because it was funny. Because it was painful. He told you that? He said someone with your background should have been powerful. And you believed him? I believed that I was losing you. The room went silent. Olivia stepped closer. I watched you spend years fixing buildings nobody cared about. I watched you refuse opportunities. I watched people look down on you. Her voice cracked. And I started wondering if I was wrong for wanting more. Ethan looked at her. Wanting more wasn't wrong. A pause. But believing someone who only wanted to use you was. The next morning, Ethan returned to Ashbourne Dominion with one goal. Find the truth. Not revenge. Not anger. Truth. Margaret had already prepared the private archives. A room beneath the headquarters that even most executives didn't know existed. Inside were decades of documents. Every contract. Every investment. Every decision Richard Ashbourne had ever made. But one file was missing. Margaret noticed immediately. The succession file. Ethan looked at her. Missing? It should be here. Who had access? Her expression darkened. Only 4 people. Who? She hesitated. Me. A pause. The former chairman. And Damien? Margaret slowly nodded. Yes. Ethan looked around the room. Then we know where to start. For the next several hours, they searched through every record. Damien's plan was bigger than anyone expected. He hadn't simply tried to steal one company. He had spent years creating doubt, buying influence, building relationships, waiting for Richard's death. But then Ethan found something. A small envelope hidden behind an old blueprint. His father's handwriting. Margaret froze. "I didn't put that there." Ethan opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. Only one sentence. "The person who finds this is not the person I fear." Ethan frowned. "What does that mean?" He continued reading. "The greatest threat will not come from outside the family. It will come from someone close enough to know exactly where the cracks are." His eyes moved to the next line. And stopped. Because Richard had written a name. Not Damien. Not an executive. Someone else. Someone Ethan knew. Margaret saw his expression. "What is it?" Ethan slowly turned the paper toward her. Her face went pale. "No." "What?" "That cannot be possible." The name on the page was Olivia Hart. Ethan stepped back. "No." Margaret looked conflicted. "Your father investigated everyone around you. She didn't know anything about this." "Maybe." Ethan stared at the name. "Maybe?" Margaret remained silent. That silence created a fear Ethan couldn't ignore. Meanwhile, across the city, Damien sat in a private office overlooking the skyline. Olivia sat opposite him. "You said you would protect me." Damien poured himself a drink. "I am." "You told me Ethan would never be hurt." Damien smiled. "Nobody said anything about him becoming powerful." Olivia looked confused. "What does that mean?" Damien placed a folder on the table. Inside were photographs, records, messages, evidence. She flipped through them. Then her expression changed. "You lied to me." Damien didn't deny it. "You were useful." The words destroyed whatever hope she had left. "You never cared about me." "No." He looked at her calmly. "I cared about winning." Olivia stood. "You ruined my marriage." Damien shrugged. "Your marriage was already broken." She looked at him with anger. "You have no idea what you destroyed." Damien smiled. "Actually." He leaned forward. "I know exactly what I destroyed." Back at Ashbourne headquarters, Ethan finally discovered the truth. The birth certificate was fake, but not created by Damien. Someone inside the company had helped him. Someone with access to private family records. Someone who knew Ethan's entire history. The evidence pointed in one direction. The person who had leaked his identity. The person who had weakened his inheritance. The person who had helped Damien enter his world. Was not a stranger. It was someone Richard trusted. The board meeting began at midnight. Every major shareholder attended. Damien entered first. Confident. Relaxed. He believed the battle was already over. Ethan Ashbourne, he announced, is not legally recognized as Richard Ashbourne's son. Whispers filled the room. Ethan entered moments later. No anger. No fear. Just determination. Damien smiled. "You still came." "I did." "Why?" Ethan placed the leather folder on the table. "Because my father taught me something." Damien laughed. "And what was that?" "Never destroy something before understanding how it was built." Ethan opened the folder. Inside were copies of financial transfers, secret recordings, private agreements. Damien's expression changed. "Only slightly. But enough. You don't have access to those." Ethan looked at him. "My father prepared for this." The room went quiet. Damien stepped forward. "You're bluffing." Margaret connected a device to the screen. A video appeared. Richard Ashbourne. Older. Tired. But clear. Everyone stopped moving. Richard looked directly into the camera. "If you are watching this, someone has attempted to take control of what I built." Damien's face lost color. Richard continued. "They will tell you my son is inexperienced." A pause. "They will tell you he is weak because he chose a simple life." The video showed images of Ethan restoring buildings, helping communities, teaching workers. Richard smiled slightly. "But those who understand leadership know this. Power is not proven by what someone takes. It is proven by what they are willing to protect." The room remained silent. Then Richard revealed the final piece. The person who betrayed my family will be exposed by their own actions. Everyone looked around, because nobody knew what came next. The screen changed. A series of messages appeared. Damien's instructions, the forged documents, the payments, the entire operation. But one message stood out. Sent months earlier. From someone named Olivia. Ethan stopped breathing. The room erupted. Everyone turned toward him. Margaret looked shocked. Damien smiled. Finally, he had found his opening. Ethan. Damien looked directly at him. Your father wasn't wrong. A pause. You were betrayed. Ethan stared at the screen, unable to speak, because the evidence was there. His wife had contacted Damien. His wife had shared information. His wife had helped create the trap. But then Olivia entered the room, crying, running. Wait. Everyone turned. She looked at Ethan. I can explain. Nobody moved. She stepped forward. I know what those messages show. Her voice broke. But they don't show the whole truth. Ethan looked at her. What truth? She reached into her bag and pulled out a small recording device. I was never working with Damien. A pause. I was investigating him. The room froze. Damien's confidence disappeared. For the first time that night, he looked afraid. Olivia pressed play, and Damien's own voice filled the room. A voice revealing the entire plan. The manipulation. The lies. The betrayal. Everything. But before the recording reached the most important part, the lights suddenly went out. The building went dark. Security alarms exploded. Someone had cut the power. Margaret grabbed Ethan's arm. He's trying to destroy the evidence. Ethan looked toward the darkness. Then came a message on the emergency screen. One sentence. You should have left the past buried. And Ethan realized something terrifying. Damien wasn't running. He was making his final move. If this story kept you watching until this moment, comment below. Legacy matters more than money. If you believe Ethan made the right choice by protecting his father's values instead of chasing revenge. Like the video, subscribe for more billionaire stories filled with hidden identities, betrayal, and redemption, because sometimes the greatest fortunes aren't inherited, they are earned through the choices people make when everything is taken away.